When was there a point in the season where you realized this was absolutely the right move for you? Like, was there a point where you realized where this was, you knew everything Bill had sold you on over the summer, that the fit was exactly as he envisioned and as you kind of needed it to be?
It was such a day-to-day thing. Each day starts with training camp. It's hard to describe. Everybody says they have a great room, and relatively speaking, I guess everybody feels they do. But there's certainly an interest by the player here to get better. I think that's driven definitely by the leadership. They're in the room. They're working out. The first day of testing, I think I've said this before, you have these fitness tests that aren't easy to do. There's a big chunk of, and I'm going to say this is true of all pro sports, there's a big chunk of guys that really don't have to test great. They can test okay. And they do because they're pretty darn fit guys. But what I mean is they won't stay on a training camp. They haven't even hit the ice yet. They know this is going to be a grind. They don't have to go hard on the test. It doesn't mean they're not fit. They can be incredibly fit, but why would you burn yourself out on the bike test before you even hit the ice? And and they worked hard at it. Like, they got off the bike kind of hurt, right? Because they pushed that hard. That was the first sign that, when your top end guys kind of push to their max, that these guys will work hard, they'll compete hard. And that kind of carried through. Even we had some challenges that there's an automatic style of game change by the number of people that left and the style of player that left. So they had to go through that, fit themselves into a new way of playing. And every team has injuries, but at center ice and at defense, when you have some injuries, it's hard to get that traction. I didn't think, and there was definitely an adjustment period to the style of game. And some of that was me. Like, you got a plan, and we did. We stick with the plan. But as you're navigating it, more than one way to skin a cat, I guess, but you kind of make your adjustment after you get through November and say, all right, we're getting part of this, but we're not getting all of it. I said to all of you so many times, which must have been infuriating, I like big chunks of our game. And I did, but we couldn't sustain it. We couldn't get completely consistent with it. And I understood it, because the year prior, they'd come back 24 times. They'd get down early in games and open it like wide open and have success. Except you know that you can't do that in the playoffs, right? That's a recipe for disaster. So, boy, I beat the heck out of this one. I would say you could feel it day by day that this was a really fun place to work, and it was all because the players came to work every day. Even, we had a handful of very tough meetings where I called them names, but then they went and worked really hard the next day, and then it built, right? They started to feel it. That I think the critical pieces to the season were the end of January. That 2-week block in the end of January mattered. And winning that game against Boston, because they were at their most fatigued, their most beat up, was really important to us. And then, of course, making the playoffs, and it was a grinder there. So that we got to Boston in the first round, there was lots of confidence. It's also a really good team we were playing against, so as confident you can be. They could still be up 3-1, and games 3 and 4 they were pretty dominant in. But I felt it right from day one. This group seemed different. I felt it when I first got off the phone with them. We didn't even talk hockey, each one of the players. I was trying to explain to the other coaches, it's different. These guys are different. And they would have that exact same experience. What Bill said to me in the first kind of really long hockey meeting, exactly what he thought would happen happened. There's going to be some adversity here. People aren't going to fully understand. Just by the 7 guys or 6 guys we lost Hornquist, but Duclair wasn't there. This is going to look different, and it's going to be hard for people to understand, but we've got to get this team to a game that we can replicate. And we did.
One follow, you all season, all throughout the postseason with us, you've been very deferential to the people in the room. You haven't said, this is me, this is my staff. You've been very deferential to the players. That said, how did you get better this year, whether as a coach, as a person, like you don't hide, you've stopped hiding the emotion somewhere in the postseason. Like your answers to us show that this year clearly had some profound effect on you. Where did it change you?
It was my entire experience. Part of me coming back and taking the job was I had a sense. So we have a set of skills as a coach. Everybody has their own set of skills. And then there's a place that you can get better, right? There's a part of you, not necessarily, I mean, you can't be all things to all people. Everybody has a style. I thought Bill's personality would bring out, God, I don't want to make this too long an answer, but you have to understand I came in the league at 28. And I guess, like, I'm just burning some math. It's so, to make it sound more dramatic, it's over a quarter century ago. So that it was a different sport. And I was 28 years old. So there's a great section in Bill Belichick's book, The Education of a Coach, where he talks about walking around with a growl on his face so everybody would take him seriously. I read that and went, I know exactly what he's talking about, right? And that kind of maybe becomes who you are after a while. It's a hard sport. You drive men. You are critiquing them, and at times it feels like you're critiquing their character every day. Like it can be a grinder in there, right? I'd like to think I'm fairly calm with you people, but I wouldn't be so calm. Or I talk to them like the referees someday, if that makes sense. But these guys allowed, I don't know if it's a softer is the right word, but certainly a more human part to it. And then I'm just old and I don't care anymore. That's maybe it's just playoffs, right? I'll tell you exactly how I feel. Got to be careful about the players sometimes and being careful with that. But I'm more emotional and okay with that now, and tell you how I feel. So I did every year is different. We have to start from scratch next year. You start from zero. But I had to fall in love with those guys. I wanted it so bad for them. Like, God. It didn't happen, but it was still raw and painful, and you guys can't use any of this. I'm going to ask you not to use any of this, but we were just laughing about the number of times that you walk around, take a deep breath, and go, like, and somebody said that. I went, I did that 10 times already today. Sorry for the camera, guys. Because you wanted it so bad for them, right? You just fall in love with the guys. And then I'm already mindful of that. You can't be in love with them at training camp. Got to start from scratch.
Hey, Paul. We spoke to Chucky and Eki just kind of a little bit more about what was ailing them. We haven't really heard about E2, or is there any other guys that you can kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you the stuff that we don't have to make a decision on. So there's some guys we got to make a decision on. They're going to go see the doctors, they're going to get all the imaging they can, and there's going to be either you can rehab it or you can do surgery, right? There's that. A2 effectively broke his tibia, the top, the weight-bearing part. So you can play with certain broken bones, but he took it right on the top of the tibia. So anytime he just stood on it, right, he was standing on a broken bone. So he tried it. They got him ready one day, but he just couldn't do it. His leg wouldn't work. So, but there's no surgery to that. It's just going to heal. He's going to be fine. So we have a bunch of guys like that. We do have some people that are surgical candidates. So I'll wait until we decide how that's going to go before you go out. And that's what today is. So today everybody comes in, does their exit physicals. We get a list of guys that'll go, okay, it's going to take 2 weeks, take 3 weeks, you'll be fine. And then there's you guys got to get looked at this week. They've already been looked at, but now the doctors are going to see the full extent of where they're at, and we'll chart a course for recovery.
And just to follow up on what Tim said, thinking back a year ago right now, how far has it come? Has that thought kind of popped into your head? Because a year ago right now, you didn't even know you'd be coaching, right?
Right. I think we're closing in. I'd been down twice at this point last year, and we were getting closer to thinking that we should do this. Okay, the year, yeah, so there's some really strong individual improvement, but that has to be recaptured. So you say how far you've come. We get some learning, and then we start back at zero. And I'm not, we had to fight to make the playoffs. And because of that, that's where we start from. Yeah, we've got some players that I think changed their game. I mean, the game that Sasha Barkov played for 2 months in the playoffs is markedly different than the game he played last year. Learning. So he has that now. So we'd like to think that these guys all have a little more in their memory bank and a little more developed. But it has to be reestablished. That's why you haven't seen a necessarily post-Kappa team run 5 in a row. It has to be reestablished. So instead of saying we've come a far way, we would say we traveled a far way last year, but the trip starts from home next year, and we've got a long trip ahead of us.
Quick question about the injury stuff. Sam Bennett, saw him before game 1. I didn't think he was going to play again this season, and then he's in game 2. And then we saw he looked hampered in the final. How badly was he hurt going into Boston, and did he re-aggravate or something new?
No, so his first injury, the one that kept him out toward the end of the season, I think it was described to me as a ticking time bomb. So when we came in and he played game 2, I'm thinking, okay, we get game 2.
Right.
But that one, it's more of a groin injury that held. But he had a pretty significant oblique problem, and for hockey, so much twisting. That's real, and I think it bottomed. Like it was the most egregious for him in the Toronto series. He was 7 games. He went 6, but 7 games day off, and then you get into the Toronto series. So we got into game 3 and 4, and he was struggling to play those games. And then I think he that one leveled off, so he was able to kind of keep going, but he was never close to, I don't know. He was in an awful lot of pain, but he still got it done. Like, he still played.
So it wasn't a sports hernia or anything like that. It was just a...
I don't know what the words are. When I said groin, sports hernia, depending on where it is, it's all the same thing. That right. was his original injury.
Right.
That was the end of the season injury that he just played through. It didn't get worse, or he wouldn't have been able to play. So he got through it. Yeah, that was his other thing. Was another thing.
We don't know what Bill's going to do. The draft's coming up for agency in I don't know, in an hour. But most of these guys are coming back. I mean, you've got to make some moves on D and all that, but most of this team is coming back. How much does that, I know you said that you can't be in love with your players at training camp, but to be able to try and run this back, as the kids say, with this group, does that excite you?
Oh, for sure. There's a whole lot that you don't have to cover for as long. This is our neutral zone. It's not brand new to them. The neutral zone defense now, they get it. They'll talk to the kids. You'll put a kid out there with the 2 older guys so that they can explain it to them. That goes in, and you're just looking for consistency and space. So a big chunk of what we do has already been covered. And we changed, I think in that November, December range, I was trying to merge 2 ideas. Where we needed to go in terms of just hardness, but also some system stuff and some patience things in our game, so we weren't all over the ice. I was trying to merge the 2, and it wasn't merging, which is why I'd like chunks of our game. We had 2 ideas on the ice. We could do this for a while, and I really liked the way we played, and then we're all over the place. So we kind of knuckled down to a little bit more of a meat and potatoes basic. We're only doing these 4 things, and that's all you get credit for, and anything outside that you don't get credit for. So I think we'll be able to start with that mindset. The nice part is I never not once had to fight a leader over style of game. Not once. There was never somebody, hey, we got to open it up here. I think we got to stretch a little more here. How can we find easier offense? I never had that issue.
Coach, you mentioned earlier how this group is different, and also how you've been a coach for a quarter of a century. Where does this team, however, rank in terms of when you compare them to the last several teams that you've coached?
I don't think I want to answer that question, because there's no way for me to answer it appearing disrespectful because, we got to the conference final in Winnipeg with one of the youngest forward groups in the league, and I really enjoyed the hell of those men too. How do I explain it to you? I think they had in each place that I've coached at times, they're a very close-knit group. This one was just kind of really unusual to watch, right? They got some funny guys. I would say this. I think this team enjoyed playing with each other more than any team, and they would show you that. They would show it in practice, and that's what I don't think I've explained it well because I don't know that I understand it completely well. I'm kind of got a little closer view than the fans have of our team, right? Because I'm around them a little bit more. But in some ways, you're just kind of sitting back and watching it, and you're seeing two guys chirp each other in the corner, and then you get to see them going up and down the ice hard in practice, right? And then in games, you didn't like your game, you're doing your meeting, everybody's watching, right? One of the lines is, be careful what you tell them, they're going to do it exactly that, right? Coaches are responsible for all the boring 80% of the game, which is just the boring, crappy stuff that nobody ever has turned on their TV to watch. The players are responsible for that 20% that's magic, right? So we didn't want to take that 20% away because nobody's going to show Matthew or one of these guys how to do those things. This is just trying to get 5 guys in the general vicinity of each other with a fairly high rate of prediction of what's going to happen next. That's kind of what we do. But these guys, man, you tell them, I want this guy here, that guy'd be there. Except 80% of that time it works, but there's another 20% where you actually can't be there, and you need to be able to play the game. So, boy, I just beat the hell out of that. Let me answer your question. I had a different experience this year than any other year in hockey. I could also say that's true of any other year, but I got an unbelievable seat of watching a group of men come together and do something I think was special because I've never experienced it before. So you can cut all that other stuff out, Katie. Just burn it. Just go with that.
Take our last question from Dave.
Just one more quick on the injuries. You mentioned after the game that there might be a couple of guys who probably won't be ready for the start of the season. Aaron said he's probably one of them. I don't know. Are there any others you can share yet, or is that all?
I need to
Figure out who's getting
so
surgery
there's
or
not
whatever.
5 stories, because if I tell you there's another guy,
Right, yeah.
and then he sees the doctor this week and they say, you know what, I think we can rehab this thing in a shorter period of time. I don't need everybody knowing that guy
Right.
was banged up because he might be at 90% in training camp and he doesn't need to be targeted. So we're going to do the due diligence. There's probably 2 guys, Aaron's one of them, that we're going to have to take a look at that might bleed into training camp. Everybody else, I think, heals out. Now, there might be some guys that aren't as fit as they would have if they had a 5-month healthy summer, that it might curtail what they can do over the next 6 weeks, but I think everybody else is healthy.
And I did want to ask you about Aaron, because a couple of weeks ago, you were very complimentary of the way he kind of changed his game. Now we obviously know about all the stuff he was going through, too. How excited are you about what, especially if he can get healthy? I know he's had a lot of injuries over the last couple of years, but as he kind of like learned to play the system, about his potential to get back to being a kind of like Norris Trophy type.
Yeah, I think in order to be a Norris Trophy guy, you've probably got to put numbers up on the power play because numbers are so attached to, and I understand that. But
I just mean that caliber of player that he was.
But in terms of everybody going, man, this guy's playing. So when he gets moved off the power play, Monty comes in, and then he gets moved off it again toward the end. Some of that was he couldn't shoot the puck as hard, right? He had some shoulder issues, and he had the foot issue, and a couple others. God, I was excited about his willingness to change the game and give you what he had. He had a couple plays here at home. He went over the wall on one, tried to get it out on a penalty kill it could, and you could kind of hear the crowd grumbling. And you want to come out and say, look, that guy's foot's broken, popped his shoulder out, he can't move. I'm just happy he got to the puck, let alone got the thing out. But he had a lot of big moments that because we knew what he was going through, you would celebrate on the bench when he was able to do something like you're going, oh, that's pretty good that he did that. Those are the things that build the room, right? Radko Gudas was a guy that sprained his ankle, high ankle sprain, and that's a 6-week heal. And he steps back out on the bench in the period. So that kind of happened in our room, right? how much can you play with, right? How much pain can you endure? And that became part of what they were given for each other. So Aaron went 2 months in pain and for his teammates, and he didn't play the game necessarily that it looked like maybe when he was banging in a bunch of points, or you were saying, okay, he's a Norris Trophy guy. But in terms of what he gave his team, it was his finest moment of his career in my mind, because he survived and he helped us, beat 3 really, really good teams.
And to follow up on that, Aaron Ekblad all year was hurt, correct? I mean, we talked a little bit, I think, in January or February,
Yeah,
and there was stuff you couldn't talk about at the time. A foot, you said.
Well, he lost
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he had the 13 games at the start of the season, and then he was battling. So, and the guys in the room know that, and they appreciate that. I mean, that's all known things, and we had a lot of guys beat up, as every team does. There's always that report. But we had a number of players that, you're not playing regular season hockey if you're hurt like that.
Is Chucky one of the guys that you're not sure for the training camp at this point?
No, I don't think so. I think he's okay based on he gets checked out again. The original reports would be just heels. Now, he's not going to be able to do a lot of upper body work for a while. It's 4 to 6 weeks for those things to heal. That's going to put him into July before he's training, but he gets another 6 weeks, and then he gets another 2 weeks to training camp. So you got 2 months to really, really push hard. So he'll recover from that. There's a bunch of guys just like that. They just need a block of time for the injury to heal, and they can go.
Thanks, everyone.
Well, I won't see you for a while. Thanks for everything.